25 years of me knowing this man. Mr. Kerry Bretz has 3 offices in New York City, Lower Manhattan, the Bronx, and in New Jersey, all serving the immigrant community. Thank you for your loyalty, because not everyone is loyal. So Coven, what was his first name?
Jules
Coven?
Yep.
Was he a native New Yorker?
Native New Yorker, Jewish, and there aren't a lot of Jewish Christian law firms, and he had a practice that did everything in immigration that I didn't do in different ethnicities, and we bumped into each other one day in court, and we went to dinner and we made a deal, and I came back and I told Eileen, and she says, wait a second, you did all that without seeing his office and everything else? I said, I did. And we just dived into it, and really in 2 years' time, we did this in 1999, in 2 years' time, we doubled the size of our staff in the office.
Within how long of a?
2 years.
In 2 years, wow.
So when we merged.
What year was that?
This was 1999 when we started that. So I was Bretz and Associates until 1999, then we became Bretz and Coven. And Jules was great, man. Jules, he was a law professor at Brooklyn Law School, teaching immigration law. He was a past president of the American Immigration Lawyers Association. He had a lot of credentials. And we just had this great partnership because we didn't nickel and dime each other, right?
Yeah.
We had 2 associates that left and tried to form their own practice. And they left in a very not a pleasant way. They tried to poach clients and all this stuff. And they were out of business in 2 years because they were going to lunch. One would get lobster and the other would get a hamburger, and they would make an adjustment paying the bill right then and there. So Jules and I just never nickeled and dimed each other, and I learned from him, he learned from me, and it was just an amazing partnership. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. And that was also the time that I was breaking up with Eileen, and he was a little nervous, right?
Yeah, because the stability. Yeah. People knew you. You guys were high school sweethearts.
Yeah, more or less.
So it was around the time. That's interesting, Kerry. I'm so happy that you stayed in partnership with Eileen. Yeah. Wow. So
we're separated. September 11 comes, we're separated, I'm living downtown, the office is closed, and we both had lawyers, and I went to her one day and I said, listen, we're gonna pay a fortune having the business evaluated, figuring all this out. Jules is freaking out. I said, stay on, keep the house, and all the shit that's in the house. When Jules retires, I'll take his third. And frankly, Jules and I were the rainmakers, and Eileen was more of the managing partner. Did all the shit I would not want to do, right?
Right.
Employee compliance, all that stuff. And she thought about it, and she said, "Yeah."
That's awesome.
Yeah, and our lawyers were pissed off.
Right?
Yo, they were expecting like a big hit, man. And I was like, nah, write it up. This is what we're doing.
Your intuition is what I am in awe with. You have a special intuition. You have a special intuition. Come on. Think about everything that you've gone through and every life-changing moment. And your intuition has been the one leading the way to where you are now. It's your intuition. And I want to know more about this intuition.
I don't know. I've made a lot of left turns when I should have made a right turn in life.
But you've always landed on the right direction, the right path. So I want to know how you became Kerry Bretz, the immigration's attorney, heavyweight champion. Come on.
I don't know.
Kerry, you're a kid from the Bronx. Kerry, come on. You're 13 years old. What happened to you when you were come on.
Yeah, I got arrested for robbery.
Kerry,
It was a 50-cent bus pass, but
Can you believe?
Yeah.
And fast forward, and
Fast
look at you
forward.
now.
yeah.
Look at you now, helping hundreds and hundreds of people fulfill their dreams in America. I think that should not be taken lightly, and that's something that you have to honor and admire. Huge admiration for you.
Thank you. That's very sweet of you to
Huge
say.
admiration.
Yeah.
Like huge admiration. And I want to make sure that you get your flowers. Huge admiration with everything that you've done. All these cases. The emotional toll that this takes on someone when you're fighting for someone's right to stay in this country. I mean, your practice concentrates on the criminality. Is that of the immigration
Right.
side of things? Like, you have some crazy stories
Right.
about people that you've helped become American citizens when there was no way near, any way near in their path, with all the mistakes and errors that they've done. Like, you have been Superman. Like, seriously. So I want to know the wildest story.
The wildest one was my first trip into federal court. I took this case free, pro bono. Let's call the young woman from Jamaica, Teresa.
Who was the judge? Like, did you know?
Yep, the judge was Alan Page. He's since retired.
Wow.
And I was, when my first job out of law school, was working for the government as a prosecutor for the Legacy Immigration and Naturalization Service, right?
What year?
That was 1991.
Wow.
I graduated law school. I get this gig with the Department of Justice. It's relatively prestigious. Comes with a badge that looks really impressive. And so I'm on the law enforcement end. And the advantage of that, rather than going into private practice right away, is you get a lot of experience, right? Government work, you're in court like right away. So I did that for a number of years, and I was in front of this judge a lot. And I'm in private practice a short time, and he called me up, and he said, listen, you didn't hear this from me. You have to help this lady out. She's got a terrible lawyer. And I'm sympathetic, but I'm probably going to have to issue a deportation order somewhere along the line. Why don't you consider taking the case? So I went to the detention center, which at that time was in an office building on Varick Street and
Wow,
7th Avenue,
yep.
across the street from Sounds of Brazil, a place I used to hang out in.
Sounds of Brazil. I remember that spot.
SOBs, right?
SOBs. Wow.
And I met Teresa, and she was a green card holder who, when she was 17, did something that was incredibly stupid. She put some condoms of heroin in her body, and she took it to Bermuda. Now, I don't know who takes drugs out of the U.S. for profit, and she got caught.
Yeah.
And so Bermuda didn't have a juvenile law. They detained her for 6 months.
She was 17.
Right. When she turned 18, they convicted her, and they gave her a very harsh sentence. Meanwhile, she had a young daughter, 3, 4, 5 years old, with sickle cell anemia, who was just getting worse and worse,
Yeah.
being separated from mom. And so the consulate general for the U.S. to Bermuda took an interest in her case and
Wow.
got her sentence reprieved. Picked her up, brought her to the pre-inspection immigration station, bought her a doll for her to give to her daughter. She gets to JFK, and INS, Immigration Naturalization Service, locks her up. You're inadmissible and deportable for being a drug trafficker.
Wow.
No waiver.
Wow.
And she's detained, and she can't get out. And I thought maybe I could get her out of custody for some period of time, rekindle her relationship with her daughter, finish the semester, and then you're going to have to leave, right?
Right.
That was the plan. And what I faced with the way the law was set up, the judge did not have discretion to grant bonds in this circumstance. Only INS could release somebody in this circumstance. And oddly enough, we're back in the same situation now, right? So I thought I would make this what they call a parole request to the district director of INS with all these sympathetic factors, and they would release her, temporarily. And instead, they denied it in a very sarcastic way, like, you were one of us, you should know better.
Wow.
So the blood went to my head, and I connected with a woman from the ACLU that I still talk to sometimes, Judy Rabinovitz. And I said, listen, this is a great case for the ACLU. And she said, no, it's definitely a loser, and the ACLU won't take it. But if you take it, Kerry, we'll help you. And nobody's going to fault you for doing it. And so I did. And I did make every mistake you can imagine. I filed a habeas corpus in federal court. And I made a lot of mistakes. But I had a great judge, Judge Kimber Wood. She's still a federal judge. And to make a long story short, ultimately, I argued that this law was unconstitutional. So this is my first habeas corpus. I'm now saying this law is unconstitutional. The government is laughing at me. She's still detained.
Your first time in federal
court. First time. And I'm telling you, I made mistakes.
How old were you?
So this is, I don't know. Math was never my thing. I'm in my 30s.
In your 30s.
I'm in my 30s because I went to law school late in life. So, I'm in my 30s. And eventually, Judge Wood finds that the statute violated both procedural and substantive due process and found it unconstitutional. So this is my first habeas corpus. And so she orders then that the immigration judge conduct a bond hearing within 7 days. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, Judge Page had already ordered her deported, and I had filed an appeal. And my argument on appeal was a ridiculous long shot where I said, well, she was 17 when this happened. If this happened in the U.S., she wouldn't have been prosecuted. She would have benefited from the Federal Youth Corrections Act, which at this time no longer existed, right?
Can you believe?
And what I found out is that the Board of Immigration Appeals did not want their judges to do this bond hearing. And on a Friday, the bond hearing was scheduled for a Monday. On the Friday afternoon, I get a fax. These were fax days. I get a fax from the Board of Immigration Appeals. They never faxed anything to me, nothing. They never faxed anything, right? It was all very full. They agreed with my argument, and they ordered that the proceedings be terminated.
Wow.
So the judge wouldn't have to do the bond hearing. So I go to Varick Street. These are the days of pay phones. There's a pay phone in the waiting room. And I call the U.S. attorney, and I said, you're cutting my client loose today, right? He says, yeah, I'm going to send you over a stipulation where you're going to waive any fees and blah, 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 blah. I said, I'm not waiving shit, man. And he said, well, we're not going to release her. I said, well, I'm going to tell Judge Wood. And he says, well, you're not allowed to tell what we negotiate to a judge. I said, listen, man, I already made every mistake in the book. Well, Judge Wood, it's 6 o'clock, she's not there. The Part 1 judge is Patterson. He's never going to release your client. I said, no. Judge Wood's clerk, Julie Hilden, she gave me her home phone number. I'm going to call her, and I'm going to repeat all this shit you're telling me. It feels like extortion.
Dope.
Give me the number of the payphone. I give him the number. Half an hour later, he calls me back. We're going to cut your client loose.
Beautiful.
So then I found out two things. So while Teresa was detained, she was a very attractive young lady, and she was detained for a long time, about 9 to 10 months before we got to this point.
Yeah. Wow, that's a long time. Her psyche, her mental state, that's really strong.
This woman was suicidal.
I bet.
She was suicidal. Several times she attempted to kill herself.
Wow.
But what happened is, and I found this out deep into the process, I had tried to get a psychiatrist, a private psychiatrist to visit her. And I did get somebody from, amazing. At that time, Physicians for Human Rights. And INS wouldn't let her in. Judge Wood had to issue an order that she be allowed in. And Teresa opened up to her and showed her a picture that the guards took of Teresa with her clothes off, holding her breasts. And it was on the processing camera, with its 4 pictures that come out. They were taking her out of the dorm at nighttime, drinking beer with her, partying with her, and they did these pictures. And this woman was smart enough in all the partying to take one of those pictures. She always carried like a novel, a book that she was reading, put in the book. She never told me, but she opened up to the psychiatrist. So anyhow, so Teresa gets out, and I do file a federal tort claim for her and put about $100,000 in her pocket for that, which was decent money at that time. But I didn't know that if you win a case against the government, and the government acts in bad faith, even though I took the case pro bono, free, you can ask the court to order the government to pay your legal fee.
That's right.
Under something called the Equal Access to Justice Act, EJA, for lawyers, EJA fees. I said, shit, let me put in calculated all my hours. I put them all in, and I asked for, and I put down what the market rates were as opposed to what they were paying legal aid lawyers. In those days, I think the legal aid lawyers were getting like $80 an hour or something like that. Market rates were several $100s an hour. And I put down for all the work that the ACLU helped me on as well. And I asked for $92,000. And Judge Kimber Wood said, no, that's too much. I calculate $88,000. And I'm like, holy shit. Like $88,000, man. Like I'm in private practice like a short time.
I mean,
and these guys had to write me that check, and and I took $20K and I gave it to the ACLU because they really did help me, and I've maintained a relationship with them all these years.
Can you clarify what the ACLU means?
American Civil Liberties Union. So they have an immigrants' rights division where they look for cases that can be litigated all the way up to the Supreme Court.
Wow.
And I was actually involved with a major case that went to the Supreme Court. My partner, Jules Coven, was upset that I gave up my right to argue that case to the ACLU. You never give that up. How many lawyers get to the Supreme Court? But the lawyer, Lucas Gutentag, was like top shelf. And this was like a case with national interest, law professors involved. Me and my firm, we participated in writing the brief, we're on the brief, and then Lucas invited me to sit at counsel's table for the oral argument. So myself, Nancy Morovitz, who is still a law professor at NYU Law School, and Lucas Guggenthal. So I'm there in the Supreme Court. Like this was in 2001. St. Cyr. What an amazing experience. So I've always maintained this relationship with the ACLU, and it's helped me throughout my career.
That's great, and I can be more thankful to them also for stepping into this level of abuse when it comes to immigrants, especially women. Like, like this was one case. I'm sure that there are many others. Right.
So I had another one. Let's call her Maria. Very attractive Dominican lady. She calls me up from the Varick Street Detention Center. By the way, I just want to touch back. $88,000. I'm like, this is the greatest country in the world. You take a case for free, and here's your paycheck. Money that, like, if the client was paying for it, would have never paid that. I would have charged $1,500. So I just want to get that point in.
What a blessing. What a blessing.
Yeah. So I get this call from this woman, and she said that she was sexually abused by the physician's assistant in the medical center in the Immigration Detention Center at Varick Street.
Because why? You have to, does she need medical attention? How does this work?
So most of these detention centers have some kind of medical person there, usually from the U.S. Public Health Service.
Okay.
And so they may, in a lot of places they might just have a nurse or a medical assistant.
Just to
they
check
usually don't have a doctor. People come in, they need their blood pressure medicine, all that. If you're detained, you
medical assistant is something that they have.
Right. Okay. So they had a physician's assistant, and I'm going to say his name because it's a published case. His name is Moorhead.
What is his name?
Moorhead. Yeah, and so I didn't really believe Maria when she first called, because I had been representing a lot of people there, and I never heard that before. And so I sent a young associate, Mac Guadagno, a great kid who now has his own practice and took over Jules's law professor gig at Brooklyn Law School. I sent Matt over to talk to her, and he comes back and says, Mr. Bretz, she's credible, man.
Wow.
So I called this friend of mine in the Inspector General's office. The Inspector General is kind of like the police of the federal police, the police of government employees, right? And I knew this guy also from martial arts. He was always doing extreme sports, always had a broken leg or something. And I told him, he interviewed her, he believed her. She already had a deportation order. I didn't represent her. She was ready to be scheduled to be deported. He stopped all that, got her released. She cooperated with the U.S. attorney. And when they approached Moorhead, he admitted to not only inserting his fingers in her vagina when she went in for a toothache, he admitted to doing something like that to 13 other females. And I was like, how did I not know about this, right?
Wow, so these are undiagnosed things that just you're not.
Right.
Wow.
So this is my second female abused in immigration custody, right? And how did I not know? I didn't know because this guy's modus operandi, this guy's MO, this guy's the way he did this. In those days, they posted a list of the people who had deportation orders and were going to be flown out. So on Monday, they might post that on Wednesday, these people are being moved out. And so those people would try to go in and get their medicine, I guess, beforehand or whatever. And those were his targets. Why? Because they're going to be moved out and nobody's going to believe anything that they complain about. Right.
Wow, that's scary.
Yeah. So, and Maria, by the way, she got released. She had this deportation order. They put her on an order of supervision. I put some money in her pocket for that abuse, but eventually she got deported. I want to say around 2004, 2005. In 2009, they came out with something called a U visa for victims of certain crimes who cooperate with law enforcement. The public policy was to get immigrants who might be undocumented or afraid to report to the police to open up and do that. And I said, she's deported, but she qualifies for this. And I reached out to the U.S. attorney, who all those years later was still there prosecuting, sex abuse crimes against females.
Wow.
And she signed the certification, and Maria is back in the U.S. legally.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
That is incredible. Kerry, I mean, this is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like, you're Superman.
Nah, no.
I know you're, but it's like, we see you differently. Thank you so much. Thank you for standing up for women's rights. Yeah. Thank you for being a protector of people's human rights. It's scary for me to know this because, what other things fast forward to 2020? If this happened then, what is happening now? So we're going to hear crazy stories coming up now, because not only is event something that you've never seen, so I can only imagine how what would you call this? The unethical world is thriving on when it comes to something like this. And it's affecting everyone. It's sad. It's a sad situation. But we're seeing it now, and terrible stories too. You have one too of the little girl.
Yep, I saw her. Yeah, so here we are all these years later, and now ICE detention is like on steroids, right? It's become a big business. There's all these private contracts. They keep building more detention spaces. And the system is intentionally cruel. It's intentionally cruel. They arrest and detain you in New York, and 5 days later you're in Louisiana, And then when we figure out where you are, then you move to Texas. And it's horrible. But what they're doing in New York, unlike LA, right? So we saw ICE on the street in LA targeting people because they looked Hispanic or they spoke Spanish or they were doing what has been described recently by the Supreme Court as low-end immigrant jobs, just being stopped and being forced to prove that they're here legally, or fuck you, we're going to detain you. And
anyways,
and anyway, you might be a citizen, but you better figure it out and whatever.
Yeah, not our problem.
So very
yours.
cruel.
Wow.
And intentionally meant to be cruel. So I actually saw coming out of immigration court at 26 Federal Plaza, across from my Manhattan office, a 7-year-old girl from Ecuador and her mom. The girl got handcuffed first. They put handcuffs
A 7-year-old.
7-year-old.
Got handcuffed.
Yep.
In New York City.
In New York City. Then they handcuffed her mother. And then they shipped them both off to Texas in different places. And I mean, they were not my clients, but I was just so blown away. I mean, I was traumatized by it, and I've been in and out of detention centers my whole life, right? The last 30 years of being an immigration lawyer. It just blew my mind. And the practice right now, it's difficult to just see hardworking people in what seems like impossible, sad situations, separated from their family. And it's just shitty, and it's cruel. And our economy survives on immigrants. We need an influx of immigrants in our economy, and we've never fixed our system. Everybody says, well, they got to come here legally. Yeah, but you got to give them a path to come here legally. There are people that are married to citizens, and they're waiting 3 or 4 years to get an interview to come and live here. And the system is broken. It hasn't been fixed. And but we need immigrants, and right now the system is cruel. And I would go back to Obama was the first president to actually deport a lot of people. He was
the highest one,
yeah.
Over 400,000 immigrants.
Correct. But he had he prioritized, and he had published rules for people in the field to follow.
And that's the difference, that people don't get it. They just see the numbers and right there judge.
Right. So basically, on the low end, you might be deportable, but we're not going to take you into custody. We're going to use our prosecutorial discretion to leave you alone, maybe put you on an order of supervision. Basically, somebody who's here for a while, family, no criminal history, never committed an immigration fraud, maybe a special needs child. Those were definitely low priorities. Top priorities: threats to national security, gang violent felons, then drug traffickers, all the way down to low-level fraudsters. So there was this whole system, and it seemed to me to make sense, right? What's happening now is, everybody is a target. And it's not just, we're talking about immigration, but it's not just immigration, right? Now, they're segueing into, well, we should be able to deport citizens who were convicted of violent crimes. And, and the Supreme Court basically just said, if you are speaking Spanish, you look Hispanic, and you're doing one of these, what they described as a low-end job, yeah, ICE has the right to detain you, and you're going to have to prove what your status is. So, I have a dark-skinned 14-year-old stepson from the Dominican Republic. He is a citizen. I made him put a copy of his passport in his phone, and
wow.
He's not engaged in politics and a lot of adults are, but he's conscious of the fact that, he could be stopped by ICE and
How old is he?
14.
A 14-year-old
Yeah.
in America is now of color. A kid, a 14-year-old is a target.
Yeah.
And this is, instead of them thinking about what am I going to become when I become 18? This is what they're worrying about.
Yeah.
So you as the father, okay, are now coaching your kids on how to protect themselves.
Correct.
Just in case they get stopped by ICE.
Correct.
Just because simply of how they look.
Correct.